Welcome to another episode of IDTALK4ED Educators Live, the show for the unsung heroes of education. I'm your host, Sarfo-Mensah, and if this is your first time tuning into the podcast, I welcome you and I hope that today's episode is one that will have you coming back for more. If you're a returning listener or viewer of the podcast, as always, I welcome you back and hope that today's episode is one that you will find informative, enlightening, and as always, insightful. So before we get into the main event, listeners, if you are watching from YouTube, please hit the red subscribe button so you can get future notifications on new episodes of the podcast. Also, if you're listening from Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcast, make sure you subscribe there as well. And for those who would like to contribute to our platform and help it grow, you can do it in four ways. The first is through Cash App, using our handle, $IDTALK4ED, Venmo with the handle @ Kwame SM. That's KWAMESM, all one word. And then for those who have a PayPal account, you can access the URL paypal.me/Kwame SM. And then for our day ones, those who have been rocking with Identity Talk from the beginning, or you joined a little bit later in the journey and you've benefited from the content, please consider becoming a forum member today. It is the exclusive membership space for the Identity Talk community. Through this membership, you'll be able to get behind the scenes footage of the podcast. You'll get bonus episodes, early access to new episodes, as well as discounts to our e-courses, merch, and other items. To learn more about the membership tiers, you can go to our website at IDTALK4educators.com. And for our readers looking to add something to your library to enrich your professional learning, please add Learn to Relearn to that list. It is approaching its 1-year anniversary, and we're going to be having a celebration in less than a couple weeks. So if you have not purchased your copy yet, after all this time, what are you waiting for? The book's on sale right now, pretty much everywhere. You can go to Routledge and get it from there. You can go to Amazon. You can go to any online book retailer where they sell books. You will find it there. And if you're someone that has the book already and you love what you read, please, please, please leave a 5-star review on Amazon. Your reviews will help increase the visibility of the book on other online book retail platforms. So please help out and support. And for those who have been doing that, I appreciate you. Trust me, your support, I do not take for granted. And to learn more about the book, you can go to the main website, learn2relearn.com. Thank you so much. All right, y'all. So we got another fantastic episode today. This time, I got another good friend coming on who's going to be sharing her journey, and she has had quite the journey. Starting off in the classroom and transitioning into librarianship, and now she's getting into consulting. So she has had many stages in her career, and she's still looking to grow and looking to impact communities in the same way she's done as a classroom teacher, as a school librarian, among many other roles she has held. So without further ado, I want to bring on Osa Oyegun to the podcast to talk with us about her journey and what she has in store for the near future. So let's bring Osa on. Hello.
Hi, Kwame. Thanks for having
How
me.
how are you today?
I'm well, thank you. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, it's always a joy to have friends on the podcast to share their journeys. It's always a joy. So thank you for accepting the invitation.
My pleasure.
So on the podcast, we always like to start from the beginning. So you've traveled many places,
Yes.
but we always want to start at the origin of the story. So I want you to just share a little bit about your early childhood and tell us, who or what ultimately inspire you to want to pursue this path of teaching?
Yeah. Ooh, that's a long story. I was born in Nigeria and raised here on and off for the first 7 or 8 years of my life. At the time, my mother was a diplomat. She was Nigeria's first woman ambassador. So we would always, go live in another place and then come back to Nigeria. So I was really fortunate because I got to grow up amongst my cousins, my aunties, my uncles, my grandparents, and just soak up the culture every single time before we left again in the late 80s. And I don't think I really knew this when I first decided to become a teacher, but my mother really inspired me because after she left the government, she became an educator and we continued living outside of Nigeria. And I have memories of her because sometimes we'd go with her to work. I just have memories of her being with her students and her just being a very lively person. Like she held their attention. And now I realize that when I'm in the classroom with my kids, I do sort of put on a show for them because I want their attention the entire time I'm with them. So my mom was my first inspiration. And then my personal experience of going to school when you're moving countries. I was not a particularly studious kid. I was a daydreamer. I read a lot, so my mind was always off somewhere else. And because we moved a lot, I think the teachers were like, oh, they're not going to stay. So there wasn't much investment. And so when I finally decided to become a teacher, I knew that it was because I knew how I would be able to reach the kids. I knew exactly what they needed. And if I didn't know, I knew how to find it. So I was very passionate about it from the beginning and it fit.
All right, well, then it makes sense that you are teaching internationally. It makes perfect sense. You've been transiting your whole life.
Yes.
So, so making a transition into this profession was really nothing. Like you really knew what it was about because you had already lived it. But before we get into that part of your story, let's talk about your schooling because you mentioned that you were back and forth between Nigeria, the States, and probably other places along the way.
Yes.
As you were transitioning into different schools during that time, were there any particular struggles you had as far as embracing who you were, as far as your full identity and being able to show up as your full self in those different school settings?
I remember when I was younger that I always felt excluded in the schools outside of Nigeria. And sometimes when I was in school in Nigeria, but that was for a very specific reason. My mother owned the school that I attended in Nigeria. So, that was like, that's the owner's child. But outside of Nigeria, you know, I didn't look like anyone else. So I experienced exclusion in that sense. Um, and maybe that's part of the reason I daydreamed a little bit more than I would have normally. Um, but I think having had a good grounding in my culture and my identity, watching who my grandparents were, knowing who they were, my aunties, all of these people, having that grounding, I think protected me to some extent. Um, I felt like I never really internalized it. I could always look at those who were doing the exclusion or the excluding and go, you're doing this because you don't know any better, even as a child. So I knew there was something in me that knew that. And so I didn't internalize what they were doing. That didn't mean that I wouldn't react towards it. I'd get really upset, but I knew that it had nothing to do with me, that I was enough um, in the way that, anyone else was enough. I always rejected the message.
Oh, that's a strong message to have at such an early age. Most of
Yeah.
us, we don't come to that epiphany until much later in life. So to be able to
Later.
have that message so early in
Yeah.
your life, that's just critical. Now, you already had a love for books. So I'm wondering, yes, you taught in many places across the globe, but in the back of your mind, did you always knew that one day you'd end up being a librarian?
I had no idea. I
I mean, like,
didn't
looking at
know.
many books you read, I figured like
You
it
would
was
think,
inevitable. It was
you would
inevitable. You would
think. Yeah, I had no idea. I mean, the thing with me is like my career, so teaching is my second career. And
mm,
when I look back at it now, I've always just sort of had this transition and I grow and grow and grow and then I transition into something else. My first career was as a classical singer. And when I started studying classical music when I was a teenager. And because I hadn't been particularly studious, I had convinced myself that there was nothing else I was good at, but I knew I was good at singing. I knew what I sounded like, I knew the reaction I could get. And so I enrolled in music school. But what was great about that was that I had really wonderful, warm, and nurturing teachers. That was the first time as a 16-year-old that I had teachers who just sort of focused on building me up and imbuing
mm.
me with a sense of self and confidence and saying, you're good at this, you're worthy. So, some people outside of myself and my family. And in building up my confidence in that sense, that allowed me to look outside of music and have the confidence to take other courses.
Okay.
So I did all of that for my bachelor's degree. I worked professionally as a classical singer, but by then I'd started to come into my own. Um, and I think I got to a point where I thought, okay, I've taken this as far as I can take it in my current location. I have all these other interests, and I want to be able to do something with it. I could feel myself growing and changing and sort of standing apart from my colleagues in the world of classical music. And that's how I decided to go into teaching, not just teaching, but international education. Um, yeah, so it was a really just sort of roundabout way. And then after 13 years in the classroom as an EAL teacher, as an English teacher, as an elementary classroom teacher, I felt that push again to learn more, to do something different.
So
So
as I'm looking at the resume, I mean, you've been all over the place. Turkey,
yes,
Germany,
yeah,
UAE, back to DC in the States, New York City, and then eventually back to your home country in Nigeria.
yeah.
So as you are making all these transitions, how are you able to find that sense of home in each of those different countries you resided in? All
That's what
very
I'm
different
searching
cultures.
for. Yeah, that's what I was searching for. Like I'd gotten to an age, I think in my early 20s, it didn't affect me as much. I was having an adventure, traveling around the world, meeting different people. But as I got older, I started to seek that place that felt like home, that felt like I belonged. And when I didn't find it, I tried the next place. And there were also some things happening in my family that necessitated me moving back to the US. I went to DC and I thought, yeah, I've been living in Germany for a while. I don't want to have a car. So that made me move to New York City, and that felt more
So,
like my place. Um, it was kind of hard, and what I learned to do in each place was to build community. I'm introverted. I don't need a large group of friends, but I do need, a few good friends. And once I have that group, then I'm set. I'm good. So in each place, I learned to build that community and make sure I was happy and found ways to be happy in each of those places.
all right, cool, cool.
Yeah.
And as you were working in the classroom in these different countries, what were some things that you were noticing that then gave you the idea, you know what? Like at some point, I want to do something different from what I'm doing right now. Because you taught EAL for many years, you taught
Yes.
English in these different countries. So, what are some things that you just saw that stuck out to you?
I think, when you're teaching in different places, you build skills that when you're a new teacher, you don't know that you're going to have to practice.
Hmm.
Writing curriculum, you don't think you're going to get to do that as a teacher. You think you're going to be handed a set curriculum and that you'll have to follow it. Curating resources in the classroom, again, you think everything you need is going to be there. So I was just learning all of these things on the go, on the fly, and just assessing my kids and just interacting with them and figuring out, right, this works and this doesn't work. And I did that for long enough that I did not want to remain in that role anymore, because I reached a level of expertise and I wanted to be able to share that with other people. Um, I wanted to be able to say, there is a way that you can be an educator. That means that your learners will be joyful, that you will
Yeah.
be joyful, that you will all enjoy being together while your learners are learning and while you are at peace with yourself. So I feel like it's at that point that I thought I really need to be able to share this, um, and say that, like, teaching is not, it's not strenuous in that sense. It's everything else, all the outside things, but it's not what's in the classroom. The classroom is a joyful place, and I wanted to share that.
And I think that's where you and I parallel in terms of our experience, because when I left the classroom, and it wasn't really by choice, it was because my wife got an amazing opportunity with the U.S. Peace Corps,
Mm,
which has led us into this journey that has brought us to 3 different countries. But I just couldn't find jobs in international schools.
mm,
So just by being away from the classroom, I was forced to figure out different ways in which I could stay connected to the field. And
right.
that's how I was able to build capacity in other ways. But through that process, I recognized that going back to the classroom is now one option that I have, is no longer the only option.
Only
Because
option.
I'm
Yes.
able to develop different skill sets, just like you mentioned.
Yes.
And I was able to pivot in so many different ways that allow me to expand professionally. So I'm sure you are experiencing some of those same things.
Absolutely. And I think the pandemic was a huge, huge factor in that happening, right? It was sort of a big push, because now all of a sudden everyone around the world was doing exactly the same thing at the same time. And it opened up resources, which previously you would have to, like, pay for, or, be in the same place for. So it was a very, in terms of education, um, there were groups that I now had access to and things that I could learn from where I was, and people I could connect to and become friends with. Some of my closest friends today I met during the pandemic from a distance. It really, in terms of education, it was a really great way to build community even further with other creative educators. And that's something I take from it, because to be able to share and, share messages or thoughts with other people who are experiencing the same level of growth, I think was really instrumental, for me in my growth.
And speaking of creativity, you mentioned starting off being a classical singer, and
Yes.
then all of a sudden you're teaching English and EAL on an international level. And then the next thing you know, you pursue librarianship. So I'm interested in knowing, and you started to talk about it a little bit just a few minutes ago.
Mm.
What ultimately made you want to make that transition into that field?
So I think when the pandemic happened, I sort of developed an interest in technology and learning and developing higher tech skills. And
Okay.
the more I developed them, not just for what I had to do, I would learn a new skill and then I'd have a question about something else.
Yep.
And I don't know, I was just so curious about everything. And I realized that I wanted to learn more. And I started looking for programs. I think first I started off looking for a program in digital humanities, and I found good programs, but none of them really spoke to me. And then I came across a librarianship program at the San Jose State University. And what I liked about it, in comparison to other university programs, which are like, if you work in a school, you only study school librarianship. But this one, what I liked about it is you take your core courses, and then you could take courses in any other kind of librarianship that you're interested in. So if you're interested in user experience librarianship, you can take courses in that. If you're interested in archives, you can take courses in that. If you're interested in data science, you can take courses in that. And because this was a new field for me, because I was exploring where my interests were going to be, what I was good at, I just sort of started taking courses to learn, what excited me. And that's how the transition happened, because I was still in the classroom when I decided to enroll in a Master's of Library and Information Sciences. And then a position opened up, and I just sort of made that transition. It made sense to me. I understood everything about it. And I think it was fortunate that I had already been a teacher, but I knew that I did not want to study school librarianship, because a lot of the courses were, behavior management and how to do this in the classroom. And I already had that expertise. I wanted to learn about librarianship itself and its importance in the world of research and technology and data science and user experience and all of that. So it's been really, really interesting. And I just love learning so much.
Yeah.
It's fulfilling and it's gratifying to learn something new and then take it back into the workplace and see the effects that what I've learned has on what I'm doing.
And let's stay on there for a second, because I don't think librarians in general get enough credit for the work that they do. I feel like there are many times where the profession gets minimized to the point where people think, oh, you're just there to
Read all day.
read and review books and things like that,
Yeah.
as if it require any type of skill
Right.
to do this job. So I want to know, in what ways have you been able to develop librarian skills that have allowed you to thrive in other areas that we may not think of?
I do a lot of website building. I do a lot of customer service in ways that, a lot of de-escalation skills. We practice that. I have assistants in the library. And we meet every week and we plan our week. We troubleshoot, issues that come up. We have issues coming in from the parent side. We have issues coming in from the teacher side. And a lot of it are things that, there's a lot of pushback against librarian autonomy.
Okay.
And we sort of have to do like a gentle and positive pushback on, oh, he's borrowed a book that's way above his level. And really the answer to that is he can read that book with a grown up. Like our job is to foster a joy of reading, because once children love reading and they become independent readers and want to read on their own, they develop a joy of learning. So I've seen that in my own life with my own children. The research supports all of that. So but what happens is your community doesn't have access to all of that research and all of that information that you have access to. So it's not really about saying no to them, but it's about explaining the reasons why it's okay for a child to borrow a book that's above their reading level, because this isn't a classroom. This is a place where they get to choose what they want to read, where they get to learn what their interests are, which genres they're interested in. Do they like fantasy, adventure, mystery, realistic fiction, whatever it is. And in the library, they learn so much about themselves. They get to practice critical thinking skills. There's so many skills that we teach them in here that translate directly to the academic skills they are learning in the classroom and translate into who they are as they grow. They start to question things. They start to look up words. They start to, develop bigger, bolder vocabularies. Their spelling improves. There are all of these ways that we influence how our learners grow. And our job is also to market ourselves to our community. So that was one of the things that I didn't expect to do, is the level of marketing. I'm just selling, selling, selling the library to the entire community. And I now think of myself as a book pusher, basically.
Selling those books,
Yeah,
the book
pretty much.
pusher.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you mentioned that, because I'm sure your previous experience as a classroom teacher has really done wonders in terms of helping you enhance your craft as a librarian, because you're bringing
Absolutely.
in a set of skills that most librarians do not possess. So I'd love for you to go into detail about how you've been able to take those transferable skills and make it work in this new space.
Yeah. I think all those years of, curriculum, that was
Hmm.
really helpful when I got into the library, because I think expectations are low. If I decide to simply spend every single lesson reading a book with kids, no one would say a word. But because I did this program and I've read all this research on the role of the librarian in a student's life, we do more than that. But I've written my own curriculum. Um, and definitely having had that experience of doing it in the classroom at international schools that were brand new, and were just getting off to a start, has really helped me strengthen our program in the library. So this is my fourth year at my current library, and our program has grown year after year after year. So all the tech skills, the marketing, designing newsletters, sharing it with the community, making sure we're in the main newsletter, making sure I'm on our social media. We have a library page. We have a library web page on the school's main website. Um, Using our WhatsApp groups to remind everyone of upcoming events, doing after school activities. We do Battle of the Books. And before that, I did Junior Friends of the Library, where kids could come volunteer in the library or come read and play games, just really finding opportunities for getting people into the library. We also have parent volunteers, people who love reading, who are serious about it and want to have an impact on the library where, at the school where their children attend school. So they're just all of these different skills. I would say the main one is my ability to build community, um, which I developed not just in the classroom, but from my experience as a third culture kid, because you move to a new place, you're the only one, but you know that in order to survive, you've got to build community, you've got to make friends, you got to uh, meet people who know where to get so and so, and how to do this and how to do that. So taking that experience into the classroom and then taking it from the classroom to the library, I think has really helped me build relationships with all of these stakeholders in the library, the parents, the administrators, the teachers, and the kids themselves, and different groups of children from early childhood to elementary to middle school to high school.
And as you've developed these skills, you did mention something earlier about autonomy. I want to go back to that because I feel like that's something that we're still fighting, not just in the classroom, but just in our schools in
Yes,
general. Now, as a librarian, as dynamic as you are, you recognize the changing world around us. You recognize that kids are having much easier access to information than we had as kids. And
absolutely.
there's so many ways in which kids are consuming information and receiving it. So, in your work as a librarian, how are you trying to combat these different forces to get people to see that the library has intrinsic value still, even in this very age?
Yeah. So I've tried different things. I wrote a research paper on how young adults feel about the library today. And basically, all the research says that they view the library as a dead space, like, this is where people used to go in the olden days.
Well,
Um,
absolutely.
right, exactly. And so there are different things that a librarian can do, which is, we we brought in more games, we hold contests, we, have groups that can suggestions for how to improve the library and things like that. Um, but in terms of the younger children, finding it, because librarianship essentially is in a struggle with technology. We
Hmm.
do use technology, but children are consuming technology at a rate higher than they should, right? So that's affecting their ability to concentrate. It's affecting their ability to read and stay in the moment. And so I look at different ways of just creating a calm and inviting environment for them. And sometimes we'll do a unit during which we are listening to podcasts. And if we're listening to a podcast, which is a whole book and doing different episodes or different chapters, then I have the kids sit and color or draw pictures, and we're not talking at all. We are just focusing on practicing listening skills.
Hmm.
And once the episode is over, then we discuss what we've heard, and we discuss our understanding and all of that. And I started doing this last year, and I remember this was something that the kids really, really enjoyed doing. It was a big hit. And I think what that shows is that children, without even knowing it, because this is the only time, they have nothing to compare it to. They're
Yes.
missing the kind of childhood that we had, where there was very little technology. Our technology was limited. We didn't have these cell phones. And then when we eventually grew up, our cell phones were not smartphones. So they're missing that connection, that calm, that I can use technology in a way that is not all consuming. So I think in some places, perhaps they're just very anti technology. I think it's about using it mindfully and
Yes.
having that conversation with the children as well. I like to tell them why we do it the way we do it. And I like to share research with them. Like, yes, you have laptops, you have computers, you have phones, but here's what using those devices for a very long time does to your brain as your brain is still developing. We have those conversations because I want them to buy into what I'm planning for them and what we're doing together.
Right. And one area where this conversation is most relevant is with the area of research.
Yes.
Think about the way we do research. I will say probably 25 years ago, we didn't have the internet. We had the internet, but it was in the very early stages. It wasn't as advanced as it is now. We
Right.
definitely didn't have AI. We had to go to the library. Everybody had a library card.
Yes.
You had to go to the library. You were able to get X amount of books.
Yeah.
If you had to do a research paper, you stayed your behind in the library and you took like your 5, 6 books and you are searching through them.
Yes.
That was a real skill that you had to learn. Like we had to look at the catalogs and figure out, okay, it's in this section. What does the label say on
Yeah.
the spine of the book? Like
Yes.
that was us 30 years ago, and
All of that. Yeah.
still need those skills. We still need them.
We still need those skills, but kids aren't getting those skills today. They do a lot of their research online, and when they do research, they don't go to vetted research sources. They go to Google, which is not, when we talk about how the internet and technology has advanced. When we first had it, it wasn't this big open space where you had access to everything. It was very controlled in a
It
way.
was
You know,
safeguarded in
yes,
many
it was
ways.
safeguarded. And now when kids go on the internet, there are no safeguards. So they're
Uh,
exposed to all of these things that, even as an adult, I don't want to see myself. And so we're handing them these tools that are made for adults, but these companies are selling them to schools, because there's a whole lot of money in it. And I get that, but we also have to teach them how to be safe online. And I'm not sure that that is something that is generally practiced. I think because we're living in a time now where the technology is so advanced and everyone is on it, and life moves very quickly, we're skipping some basic steps in terms of how do we protect children when they're online? How do we make sure they're being safe? Do they know how to be safe? Do they know not to share personal information with people online? Because the person who you think is your age online is not your age online. That's an adult who is looking for children to victimize. So all of these things that we know are happening, we need to be able to teach safety to children online the same way we teach them in person. This is how you cross a road. You look both ways. You don't cross when cars are coming. Giving them swimming lessons, like life-saving skills. We need to teach the same life-saving skills about technology.
Yeah. And I want to take it a step further with regard to safeguarding. I think part of the responsibility of a librarian is to help students build their literacy skills as it pertains to media, as it pertains
Absolutely.
to the sources that they're consuming. You mentioned Wikipedia, you mentioned Google. These are
Yes,
tertiary sources.
absolutely.
Those should not be your go-to. You want to go to like primary articles, whether it's from a news media company like, I don't know, CNN, or your state papers. Like, at
The
least there
Library
you
of
get
Congress,
information.
yes, has those primary sources. Their website has them. They're freely available for research. JSTOR, EBSCO, there are all of these resources out there that can be trusted. And yet our kids all over aren't really that familiar with them because Google is easy. So,
And yeah,
yeah.
and I mean, that doesn't mean you don't use Google. You just need to understand that if you really want to get the most direct source, it's always going to come from the books.
Yes, a source that
And
you
then,
can trust.
right, that's been vetted, that's been heavily researched.
Yes.
Like, that's your best bet to avoid plagiarism. But my question for you is more around identity-based harm, right? Because we
Right.
understand that identity-based harm manifests itself in different ways.
Yeah.
And one of the more common ways that it does manifest itself that we don't speak about enough is through the power of words.
Yes.
So as students are vetting sources and they're taking in information, the way that we explain different current events, the way that different communities are described through these different sources, I believe that is a critical skill that we need more than ever. And if we're not developing that skill into our students and young people, we're going to see what we're seeing right now be perpetuated globally.
I think it's
And that's
already happening because what's
scary.
happening is adults are falling prey to misinformation because they're lacking these skills. And if the adults are falling prey to it, then that means children are falling prey to it too because they also lack these skills. So if they're not using the appropriate sources to seek information, they're more likely to believe anything that they read on the internet, on social media. And now we're living in an age of AI dominance, and it looks so real to be able, they can take a person's image and create a video and it appears realistic. So
Yes.
the ability to discern an AI created video from reality, from what's real, that's a skill that we should be teaching. And it's not a very easy one because adults also get taken in by it. We see it a lot in politics, all the things
Yeah.
that are
I was
happening
going to
in the
mention that.
US.
I was going to mention that.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. And but that's a really amazing, interesting way to teach kids that too. I also wanted to say that you mentioned literacy, media literacy being
Media
important to
literacy. Yeah.
teach kids, right? And that should be done in the library in conjunction with the classroom, whether it's social studies or history, whatever it is. But a school has to set the time aside for that to happen. If the school doesn't set the time aside for those lessons, it cannot happen. So the ability to recognize that as core skills and saying, like, let's look at our curriculum. Where could we put those skills? Where can they be taught? When? Which part of the year? All of that. Let's make sure those skills are covered, just like they make sure math is covered and like language arts are covered. Then that's how you get it done. But if the school doesn't come up with that time and offer that time, then it doesn't get done. And that's how
Yeah.
kids end up graduating without that knowledge.
Which I find ironic because when you look at most schools, they practice the IB curricular framework. And IB, as you and I know, is very exploratory.
Yes.
And there is a good amount of research that's involved in IB, right?
Yes. Yes.
So it's ironic how you see schools not taking advantage of the librarians and having them work in collaboration with different subject matter teachers, because there are many opportunities for cross-disciplinary work to take place.
Absolutely.
So I don't know.
Absolutely. It's interesting to see the IB sort of, because my experience of the IB has been, transdisciplinary
Yes.
practice, transdisciplinary teaching, all of that. And it made for a really rich and fulfilling experience for learners, for students. But when that doesn't happen, then what's really happening? And I wonder if that comes from a place of not really understanding what the framework is about, or if it's about needing support, curricular support, planning support, structural support, in terms of giving everyone the time to do that. Perhaps they want to do it, they just don't have it in their timetable. I don't know. At the end of the day, when it doesn't happen, when transdisciplinary learning doesn't happen, the kids miss out, and
Yes.
teachers themselves miss out on having that partnership, on working together, because then you end up carrying the load alone, and it's a heavy load sometimes.
Extremely heavy. So I know we've been talking for several minutes about the different nuances of the librarianship and how it functions within our international schools. Now I want to transition to this new phase in your professional life. So you've been in international schools for all these years, you've taught, now you're a librarian, you've seen so many different things happen in the different schools you've worked in.
Yes.
Now you're taking a dive into consulting. And I want to make sure you have an opportunity to talk about Taurus International,
Yes.
Taurus Education Consulting, your
Yes.
new venture. So talk to me about the inspiration behind the launching of your consultancy, and then tell me the gaps that you're looking to fill up in this current education landscape through the consultancy.
Yeah. I think the inspiration was my children. I have three children, um, and I started thinking about the kind of educational experience I wanted them to have. And so I went around my city visiting all the schools, like the teacher that I am. I had like a Google form, with questions, and I would rate the schools, and I visited each one. And there are really many wonderful schools here. But the one thing they all had in common, the one place that they all let me down, that I questioned, was in the library.
Mm-hmm.
So you could visit a school, beautiful campus, like wonderful curriculum, um, just teachers who were experts in their subject area. And then you would go to the library, and the library is just, the books aren't current. The person there isn't trained, clearly overwhelmed, doesn't know how to bring the community in, and maybe doesn't know how to advocate for support. So that was the same story in every single school I visited for my children. And so my visits, whenever I'd get to the library, my visit would I'd sort of like go from being a parent to being an educator, and I just start having these conversations with them. Well, you can buy books from this company, and do you have books by Nigerian authors? Do you have books that represent the students in your school? Why not? And the answers I got varied, but all were sort of there was a little bit of defensiveness in there, which is like, oh, we're a British curriculum school. Yeah, but you're a British curriculum school in Nigeria, and
That's right.
90% of your students are Nigerian. So are you saying that your kids do not deserve to see themselves represented in the books they read? That they can only read about other people who live elsewhere? Because that was my experience growing up, moving around. I had to read whatever I could find. I could barely find books in which the kids look like me. And this was just one very glaring way in which the schools, I think, needed to improve. And so when I'd have these conversations, we'd have an understanding, we'd come to an understanding. Yes, we're going to try our best to improve, and yes, we would appreciate some help. And so that's where the idea came from, because I think these people are working really hard. I'm so proud of them for trying to give the kids what they need, 21st century education. But that has to include having a well-stocked library, whether it's a tiny little room or a big, beautiful library. It has to be full of quality books that the kids will be able to get what they need from. And so I started planning for the consultancy, and the idea was, oh, I'll train their librarians. And then I realized, well, I can train them to curate books, I can give them book lists, but I also need to help them with their curriculum as well. They need to understand that as they're in a school, they are also teachers. And so, it went from helping with their libraries to helping with their curriculum as well, training teachers on classroom management, behavior management, unit planning, and just all of the things that will make coming to work every day a joyful experience, having the kids in the library a joyful experience, co-creating the library with the kids, and moving forward in a way that's beneficial to everyone in their school.
And now I want to present this scenario to you because I've seen this way too many times in different African countries I've been in, right? You may have a library, you may have books stocked up, because one thing that I've seen is you have NGOs that donate books to these different schools, some that are more under resourced than others.
Yes.
And you have these brand new books nicely shelved in this library.
Yes.
But then after a few months, the books start to get a little bent up, pages are missing,
Mm,
books are no longer nicely cataloged, they are out of order, kind of all over the place.
yeah.
So sustainability is major when it comes to maintaining libraries and ensuring that we still have books available for students. So
Absolutely.
my question for you is, what is the bigger priority? And I know that's probably a tough question, building capacity of professionals who are librarians or want to become librarians. So you mentioned the curriculum development, you mentioned some of the other skills, or is it finding ways to build fully resourced libraries that are sustainable over a long period of time?
I think it's building the capacity for training librarians, because they will go on and do the work. It takes such a long period of time
Yes.
to build that library, to make sure that it's sustainable. And that was actually the first thing I did in my own library. Everything you just mentioned, like books just out of place, no one being able to find where they were. And so the first thing I did was to just reorganize the entire library. Well, our library has 18,000 plus books. At the time, it had 20,000 plus books, but the books had not been like professional librarians. You go through your books and you see, are these books still relevant? Are they in good condition?
Mm,
Are they applicable to our student population? You go through the entire library over a period of time, just to make sure that those are books you want to keep. And that hadn't been done in a long time. So the whole process of like going through what was available for our community and then deciding, how do I want to arrange this? Traditionally, you arrange the books using the Dewey Decimal System.
Yes.
But our kids did not understand it. I remember my first year, I tried teaching it to them. They could not retain the information because, again, fast-paced school day, very short lessons. And not only the kids, but the teachers as well. So every time anyone visited the library, they needed help. And yes, we are here to help, but we don't want our patrons to be frustrated when they visit the library. We want them to be calm, to be independent, to be able to find whatever they need to find. And so I decided to genreify the library, which means organizing the fiction by genre, you know, all the mystery books together, all the adventure books together, picture books together, or, you know, fairy tales, fables, et cetera, et cetera. And a part of that is like organizing everything, labeling everything very clearly, so that if you, as a first timer, walk into the library, even if you're 3 years old in our preschool, you know where to go to find books that you want to read. There's a picture and a word, and you should be able to glean from the picture what kind of books are in that basket. And so training librarians to be able to do this, training them to be able to assess their collection, training them to be able to curate high quality collections, that's the first thing that happens. Because once they have the training, once they know how to connect with other librarians who are doing the same thing, the same job, then they can be independent to continue curating a library that works for the school community.
Whew. So much knowledge being poured tonight. So much knowledge. I love it. I love it. It's been a while since I've done an episode focused on librarians. I've done a few in the past that have been
Mhm.
amazing, but this may be the most comprehensive episode I've done focus on this topic. So also I appreciate you for sharing all these gems.
Thank
Now,
you.
yes, you're welcome. Now I ask you the final question that I ask everybody on this podcast. And the question
Okay.
simply is, how do you stay true to the teacher in you?
Oh, I don't know. I'm just passionate about anything I do. And I think that could be genetic because I saw, like, my parents are that way. My dad is retired, but because he's Nigerian, he's not really retired. He's still doing what he loves to do. You know,
Yeah.
I look, I think I learned that from my family. I do what I'm passionate about. If I get to a point where I'm no longer passionate or no longer interested, then I find ways, I find avenues um, of retaining that passion, because I wake up every day with purpose. I wake up in the morning and I'm excited to do my work.
Mm.
And I think that keeps me grounded in who I am, with all the things that we experience as African educators in international schools. I'm at a point in life where I feel really, really confident and comfortable in who I am. Whereas when I was younger, I think I may have second guessed myself based on what someone else had said. But I'm at a point now where I know that I'm an expert in my field. Um, and because of the work I do, I could uh, provide receipts for everything I do, really.
That's right.
Um,
Yes.
and so I'm not afraid of anything, and I feel like I demand to be treated with respect and care. And this is how I approach my students. This is how I approach my community. Because I just want to live a joyful life. That's it. Life is short. I want to live it joyfully.
Yes. With the three beautiful kids, you won't be able to live it with them for sure.
Yes.
And forget the kids.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. All right. So we're about to wrap things up, people. Osa, thank you so much again. And before I let you go, please let people know how they can connect with you on social media, and also drop the website link for Taurus Education Consulting so they know
Okay.
what services you offer.
Absolutely. So the website is tauruseducationconsulting.com, and that's the same for my Instagram handle. You can find me there. My email is osa@teconsults.com. And I'm going to be giving a series of library workshops in 2026. I'm really excited about them, and I'm going to be doing that here in Abuja. And then I'm hoping to sort of expand and connect with educators in other places and yeah, just help everyone be the best they can wherever they are.
All right, you heard it first from this podcast. So connect with Osa, learn about Taurus Education Consulting, and elevate your librarian game in the process. And we're going to wrap it up here. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in to another episode of IDTALK Educators Live. And as always, I wish you all good morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever you are in the world. We're going to do this again another time. Peace out, everybody.
Bye.